Today we are going to call to order the Public Safety Committee, November 8th, 3:30. We are going to do roll call. I am here. Councilmember Fullerton and Baldwin are here. And we'll go to item number 1, East Pierce Fire and Rescue Monthly Report. Chief.
All right, so I'll start off with monthly stats, and they probably came to you separately. Second, if you. So on the first set of stats on the first page, you might have to do the control wheels in to look at them. We're learning all sorts of things today. You'll see Bonney Lake overall, just for Station 111, for the service area that is primarily the city of Bonney Lake, up 4% year over year. Second set of slides, which would be on the second page, as far as travel time, response time, within city of Bonney Lake or in that service area, 9 minutes and 6 seconds at the 90th percentile versus 11:30 across the whole district. Bottom of that page is our 5-year trend, which you'll see is that we're on trend for a couple responses, incidents less than last year, or what appears to be a pretty flat year over year. Next page, where it's total counts by unit, you will see that both the engine and medic unit that run out of Bonney Lake Station, 4.8% increase year over year and 7.9% respectively between the engine unit. So again, units across the district for the most part, with the exception of in Lake Taps and the unit in Edgewood, which is pretty flat on responses, but everything else is still trending up, which would just suggest that we're doing more coverage from area to area, so we're spending more time, for instance, covering Sumner or covering Prairie Ridge or going out to Holly or something like that. Pie chart on the bottom of that page, this is the normal breakout. As always, EMS responses represent about 3/4 or 3 out of every 4 incidents that we run. Next couple pages run through mutual aid given and received, so how often we receive help from another agency and how often we give help. There's a couple additional charts in there just because of some unique incidents that we had over the last month. So the first one is mutual aid during the memorial for firefighter Jeff Conover, just because we had the entire district covered by neighboring districts. It just breaks out how many. And we kind of got a chuckle out of that because I think they ran 40 incidents in 12 hours or something. So they thought they were coming to Sleepy Hollow and they found out the opposite. So we all got a good laugh out of that. So, next page kind of breaks out the same during the Main Street fire, which I'll talk about in a minute. So just the amount of incidents. Beyond that, last page just breaks out transports, and then underneath that, responses out to Holly, which do continue their slight upward trend. If you backed up about a year ago, we were running about half an incident a day, and now we're at about an incident and a half per day as the community builds out and as Wesley Home starts to fill up. As far as other reports, I mentioned Jeff Conover's memorial. That was on October 21st down in Sumner. That had a great event, able to pay tribute to Jeff and accommodate all the wishes of the families. That event, but nice to see how large a turnout. I think he probably had close to somewhere between 400 and 500 people show up. So it was a nice tribute to him. Main Street fire. So last Friday we had the large incident down on Main Street. As I was saying to Councilman Evans, that does appear to be arson. Sumner PD did end up having a couple people of interest that popped up on security cameras. Thankfully, it sounds like at this point they do have an ignition and are just working through formally charging the person. Unfortunately, if you follow kind of the impact to local businesses down there, obviously we had a number of businesses that are complete losses where Attic, and that whole complex of Stuck Junction. I forget off the top of my head the other business.
Willow.
That's yes.
Yeah. Or Whispering.
Yes. And then a number of office spaces upstairs, but then the adjacent businesses impact either by structural damage, not to mention water damage. Used to impact them, power outages, which are still going on for some of those. Yes, you can't read. and natural gas, which I think they just finally received a couple of business. Going to be a long haul to get things back in shape there. We've been doing a lot of work. Obviously, the city's been doing helping out the business. We're doing everything we can to help support also. As far as stations go, everybody continues to see the dirt moving across the street for Station 111, so that continues on track. Our station up in Edgewood is nearing completion. If you happen to drive by up there, it actually looks like a fire station now, so hopefully in the next few months we'll be occupying that. We'll be out to bid on our Westlake Tap station this month. The Holly station should go out to bid within the first couple months of next year, and then Station 112 and Prairie Ridge by the summertime next year. So things are moving along. And then just last item I have is just that so our budget will go for final adoption on Tuesday next week, and as of right now, we're sitting at about a 2.1% year-over-year property taxpayers. So good news.
What was that percentage?
2.1.
On one of your reports, you've got BKFD as a mutual aid.
Buckley.
Oh, okay. That's how they identify themselves.
It's how, yeah, it's South Sounds 911 acronym.
Oh, okay.
System.
I like Buckley King County Fire.
Yeah.
What is that? All right. Anyone else have any questions for Chief? All right. Thank you, Chief. We'll go on to item number 2, Bonney Lake Police Department monthly report. Chief Jeter.
You'll see in front of you our report. Another busy month for us. Citizen tried to intervene in a shoplift with Fred Meyer. He had broken the display case and was trying to steal a bunch of video games. When the citizen intervened, the suspect dropped the items, and the person that was trying to help fell into a rack, cut their back. We initially thought that he may have been stabbed because the person did display a knife, but it turns out that we think that he was cut by a stanchion or something like that when the person was trying to get away, and they left in a Honda that was stolen. Big shot. So we did get it on camera, and we're trying to identify the suspect. See several other shoplifts and thefts throughout the month. It has been the week of eluding for us. We had 3 on Sunday that failed to yield for us. One of them was from a shoplift at Target, and 2 of them were from driving incidents. Then we just had another one this afternoon. For that, we'll see on the back page our stats through the end of September. Everything is still trending up. Calls for service about 25% over last year. Then with reports, robberies are up to 12 year to date versus 4 last year. Simple assaults are way up, 94 this year over 54 last year. The aggravated assaults, thank goodness, have kind of leveled out, even though we had 7 of those in September, which was our highest month so far, but trending 1 lower than last year. Burglaries are at 72 so far this year compared to 36 last year. Thefts are at 440 this year versus 306 at this time last year. Motor vehicle theft has doubled from 31 last year to 62 this year. Fraud is up from 58 last year to 71. Stolen property offenses up from 14 to 27. Vandalism, destruction of property up from 106 last year to 162. The good news is the drug offenses have gone down. I guess that's bad news because it's legal. Violation of no contact orders are up. Domestic violence offenses are up. Vehicle collisions are up. And we have doubled our DUI arrests to this point. We're at 34, we were at 17 last year. Where the trend is heading, it shows no sign of slowing down. So that is the report. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
So as we kind of move into this next following year, and because we've been doing kind of just year-to-year comparison, and obviously there's some laws and such that have passed that are affecting these numbers and making them skewed. And so my question is, As we go into the next year, will we be able to see kind of comparables to even just maybe one more column of year to date?
Our year-end report, which we try to get out by
Yeah.
April,
Okay.
May, it will have 3 years in there, the last 3 years. So you'll be able to clearly see when the laws changed and some of these
Okay.
went dramatically up, like motor vehicle
Okay.
thefts.
I guess my concern then becomes if nothing changes at the legislative level and, let's say this is a continuing trend that just, moves forward, then in a couple of years, let's say, and then we're looking at a report like this, we're just looking at one previous
bigger
year. Right. Yeah. I think it'll look like, oh, it didn't really, raise that much, but really it did if we were to look at just a few more years, to include the year when things changed. And so,
Yeah, we try to do, as I've said before, you can't get a lot out on a 1 year snapshot.
yeah.
Although this is dramatic for the city of Bonney Lake. Last year, crime went up to 26%, which is unprecedented. Still very low on the per capita and on the violent stuff, but still it was an anomaly for us. And this year it looks like it's going to be higher. Again, it was an anomaly.
Yeah, I was wondering, so we just passed the ordinance, last week or a couple weeks ago, to make it illegal in Bonney Lake to, have the drugs and all that. So is there any other ordinances that we could possibly create that would help you to make some more arrests or take care of some of this? I mean,
Well, we're
do you have
certainly
any
looking
ideas on what we could do?
We're certainly looking into it. And another thing I think I've talked to this committee before is being able to book people, in my opinion, has as much, not being able to book people, had as much impact on crime as some of the legislative changes.
Yeah.
Because if there are no accountability, last week we arrested a shoplift suspect, and he said that somebody brought a group of them here to do their crimes, and they just go and shoplift, and then they trade their stuff for drugs. They move on to the next city, and if they get caught, they take their citation, they move on. Well, we actually booked him in jail, and he's like, "I'm going to jail for this?" Yep. Make sure you
Wow.
tell your friends. That's what happens in Bonney Lake. You go to jail if you commit a crime.
That's
So our
awesome.
jail budget is pretty high this year, but I think that is one of the things that's going to stem the tide is the accountability. And I know Dina's been doing a great job of holding people accountable, judge, on the prosecution side of it. And I think that's what's going to happen is the accountability. But we're dealing with staffing shortages, and we're getting over the COVID shortages in the jail. So they're getting back, but SCORE, even though it's expensive, they have been very good about taking any and all of our prisoners. Had a lot of people I called Dina yesterday. We had somebody that was causing problems throughout the city all weekend long that got arrested for trespass. I think it's Dina's his third time being arrested for a trespass at the 7-Eleven.
I think so. He's been in the shift brief
Yes,
for
every
2
day.
weeks. Yeah.
And so I talked to Dina, and now he's being held in SCORE for a competency hearing, which is great. Hopefully he'll get the help he needs, but also it gives our citizens a break, gives our officers a break, not dealing with the same person over and over again. But I think that's one of the biggest things is being able to incarcerate the offenders and holding them accountable and hopefully connecting them to whatever they need to break that cycle. I think that, along with some of these ordinances, will go a long ways. But right now, there's no regard for the law.
Are we still having a hard time being able to keep people booked in Pierce County?
Yes, ma'am. Or get people booked.
Is the chief of corrections there still Patty Jackson?
Yes. And they are, I was told, we had a meeting the other day, they are 50% staffing. Not they have to base their staffing on what is safe for their personnel. And if they're 50% staffing, it would stand to reason that their population is going to be able to maintain the safety needed for their corrections officers.
Is it safe to say that if they're clearly seeing that there's an issue with being able to keep that staff up, what are they doing to recruit?
They just passed a wage increase, incentives for hiring for lateral corrections officers. I think they did retention bonus. The county council has done quite a few things
Okay.
to attract and recruit. I know they've got a nationwide recruiting campaign for
Okay.
both deputies and corrections folks. So I know they're working on it. It's just something that it didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to get fixed overnight. Fortunately, it impacts the rest of us. And honestly, we only book our felons there for the most part, unless it's a DUI or domestic violence. And Enumclaw's full and Puyallup full. They're like our third in line. Scores our fourth. It's Enumclaw, Puyallup, Pierce County, then Scores. It's kind of how we prioritize our jails. So they are farther down the line, but they're not even booking for a lot of the felonies unless we cajole them into it. So it's got to be pretty serious for us to get somebody booked in Pierce County.
Do we know how many staff members they fired over the vaccination? Okay, that's good. So people just don't want to stay.
I guess people are retiring.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure the reason for the staffing shortage, but I don't believe they did like King County had the
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think Bruce Stanmeyer ever required that as far as the county goes.
Okay.
Is there any way of encouraging them to eliminate the middleman and just rob the drug dealers?
I think they're too scared of consequences if they do that.
What?
Yeah, I know, shocking. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anyone else for item number 2?
I have a couple FYIs.
Oh, sure.
Unless you want me to save until the end.
Let's do it.
Okay. First, we were successful in receiving an officer wellness grant through the Criminal Justice Training Commission for $20,000 for some weight equipment and cardiovascular equipment for our officers to work out. And Ryan has graciously offered us a home for some of it at the new Public Services Center, so it'll be available to all city employees. And then we have given Chuck his 2-week eviction notice upstairs in our old gym, and we're going to put some of the equipment upstairs in that gym as well. So our officers are pretty excited about this. We got some great equipment to help encourage their physical fitness, and we also got some stuff to help with our defensive tactics training and things like that. Long-term plan would be when we give Chief Parkinson his eviction notice to move all that stuff out into the bays where they've got a pretty nice system set up and kind of replicate that. So yeah, $20,000 worth of workout equipment. Very happy, and thank you, Ryan, for allowing us to put it in your place.
Was that offered through like an equipment company?
No, I had our officers source it locally.
Oh, okay.
So we just put in for the grant, and we had our wish list on there. We asked for 21 and only got 20, so I'm not going to complain too much. So yeah, they just sourced what they thought would help and that our officers would use and would help them. Because as you know, it's a little difficult to go work out on duty in uniform at a Prime Fitness or Planet Fitness or something like that. But we do give our officers, we have forever, an hour a day to work out if they choose to, and if the call volume allows. They can't say, well, hold that arm, Robert, I'm going to be working out.
They're not firefighters.
Yeah, exactly. So if we can have that equipment at a city facility, that way, they can at least take off their gun belt and feel safe and a little bit. Call volume is, we're pretty tickled.
Perfect. Awesome.
No matching required. It's just 100%. Also, vacancy update. We still have one vacancy that we've been holding since April. Part of it was for budget. Now we're trying to find the right person. Tomorrow we have interviews for what we call exceptional entry officers, which would be officers who they've gone through the academy for sure, but may have not made it through field training with another agency. There's some other reason why they are not working, or they've been out of law enforcement, or they've only been in for a year. We require our laterals to have 2 years of experience. So a lot of times we'll get somebody that only has 1 year of experience, but wants to try to go to another agency. So we have 2 of those that we're doing tomorrow. And then hopefully if budget passes, we're doing entry level or awards next week for the 2 new positions that were authorized tentatively in 23. We hope to get moving on those.
Great. Anything else, Jake?
That is it.
All right. Thank you. Move on to item number 3, the Emergency Management Monthly Report.
Corey Jean wasn't able to make it today. I know Chief Parkinson mentioned the fire. I think most of you know. Ray Jean and her husband owned a business down there that was fire. So been a bit preoccupied lately, but she left me some notes. Last month we completed the Great Shakeout. I think some of you got your code red alerts. You know, we got a candid picture of Councilmember Evans crouching underneath a conference room table.
Yes, at 1010 on 1010.
Yes, he actually dropped covered in hell.
Yeah.
We also used this opportunity to work with our ham radio operators. They went through a process of, I think 12 of them went out and did mock building assessments. Got real well, and then they reported the same person. Yesterday, I went to the EPIC Coalition my annual board meeting out in Carbonado. We got a copy of our continuity of operations plan, and one task that Regine gave me was to bring back the hard copy, so I did as I was told, and so she now has that, and she'll be working on the best ways to train our emergency management operations plan. The state has gotten back to her on our mitigation grant application. If you will recall, she submitted an application for an emergency this building. They were pleased with the application, but they did have some follow-up questions, and so she the appropriate staff and has to get back to the state by the 18th of this month. And then finally, don't ask me about these acronyms. Sent off to the state the completed IGA packet for the EMAC and PNEMA.
There you go.
So she completed that task. And that's it.
We have no way of knowing if she did. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the acronym was.
Only 3 letters short of the alphabet.
IGA wasn't in a grocery store.
It was, yeah.
It was.
Myself.
All right, thank you much. We'll go on to item number 4, Prosecutor's Office Monthly Report, page 7 of your packet.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So in October, we had a total of 330 hearings. We had 37 arraignments. So those are new cases where the defendant's appearing for the first time. We had 91 pretrial hearings. So those are ongoing cases. And then for sentencing, we had 5 sentencings. And one of the things that's going on because of the change in rights for domestic violence victims, we're often having the defendant plead guilty and then sentencing is being set over a couple weeks so we can ensure that the victim has the opportunity to be present for sentencing if they wish to exercise that right. So that does mean that our office has a crunch to rush to make sure that victim's notified and knows when the sentencing hearing is and has the opportunity to be present or present a statement if they wish to. We also had 1 extreme risk protection order hearing. That's at Pierce County Superior Court. Basically, that's a person where there's a concern about the safety to the community, and basically it's such an extreme risk to the community. That's why they call it extreme risk protection order, that their ability to own, possess, or purchase firearms should be restricted, or we go to the judge and ask the judge to restrict that. And in this case, the judge ordered the person to get a mental health evaluation. That person's not allowed to own, possess, or purchase firearms, and the next hearing is set for December. And then one other thing that is going on, there was a lawsuit against the opioid big 3 pharmaceutical companies and Johnson & Johnson. The city is going to be receiving $250,000 from that settlement as the city's share. I found out last night when I talked to the deputy city attorney in Tacoma that he thinks that it's going to be over a 17-year period that we receive the $250,000.
Wow.
So that's about $14,000 and change per year.
Wow.
They're standing up a Pierce Regional Council to kind of figure out how the funds are going to be used regionally, and they're the approval authority for how we use the funds. So we can either pool with them. We can enter an interlocal agreement with another, like more local city. They're the approver of however we decide we want to spend the money before it's dispersed to us. So I'm going to be the representative from Bonney Lake to the Opioid Abatement Council for the Pierce region.
That was just a statewide settlement?
Correct.
Do you know what the overall was?
Oh, it was a big number. I can't remember what it was, the exact number. I don't know, Jennifer, if you know the number. It was like Powerball.
Yeah.
It was definitely it was millions.
Yeah.
So how is that broken down? Was it population? Was it?
They looked at basically the impact of the opioid crisis in population had a factor. They had a bunch
Okay.
of factors they looked at, but they looked at also the impact of the opioid epidemic to different areas.
And who decided that? Was that a state
was-
board or?
That was a part of the settlement that was negotiated between the law firm and the pharmaceutical.
Oh, okay. What are we gonna do with that 17,000 people?
14.
Was it 14,000?
Yeah.
Oh, you're increasing.
If you split that up between you and Ryan, you don't even have to do a decision card.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With that.
Jeez.
All right, thank you so much.
It looks like 518 million for Washington State. From those, it's 3 companies, right?
It's the big three and then Johnson.
Yeah,
Johnson. Yeah.
okay.
So
Who got the lion's share? Seattle?
probably the counties got the lines because like it's weird. Oh, and the state's getting money too. So I could pull up there's a breakdown of all the percentages. I can.
Cities under 10,000 got nothing.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're taken care of by the county.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you much. We'll move on to business action items. Number 1, AB 22-163, Resolution 3103, an ILA between Washington State Administrative Office of the Courts and Bonney Lake Municipal Court. Judge Daniels?
Yes, so this is a request for approval for the court to be able to accept up to $15,573.56 to support interpreter and language access services that the court has to provide to individuals who are either limited in English proficiency, deaf, or hard of hearing. We accepted money in the 21-22 fiscal year, and so this is up for us to be able to use again this year if the council sees fit to allow us to do so.
Thank you much. I remember doing this last year, and it's worked out great, right?
It has.
Yeah.
Any money that we can get to offset those costs is a boon to the community.
Absolutely. Anyone have any objection to this going on consent agenda for the next council?
No objection.
No objection. All right. Thank you, Judge Daniels.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to we're going to add item number 2 in here, which is going to be AB 22-164. This is not on the original agenda. This is now added. This is a resolution for recreational boating safety federal financial assistance grant acceptance. Will this be used, Chief, or Leslie? You?
That would be me.
Okay.
Unless Leslie wants to handle
No, Chief.
it. All right.
It's yours.
Thank you for getting this on the agenda at the last minute. I know that we may run up against not having council meetings the rest of the year, and I know the state, we just got this yesterday, and of course they want it signed days before yesterday. So this is our annual boating safety finance grant that we get from them. This year's amount is $9,666.38, which is about $6,000 less than we got last year. And there is a 25% match, which is about $2,400 for the city, which we match that pretty easily. Budget is typically around $25,000 a year for MSU. We tend to go over that a little bit, but it's funded through this grant and through the registration fees that we get, the vessel registration fees that the county gives us each year, which is about another probably $5,000 to $6,000 a year. This is just the annual agreement that we would accept this grant, federal financial assistance grant.
Anyone have any objection to that going on consent?
No, I see.
All right.
If we were doing the 22nd,
22nd, yes. You need the hard copy, Councilman Revens.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you. And then Judge Daniels, that's 1122 as well?
yes.
Okay. All right. We'll go to item number 3, which is approval of our minutes. Have any comments or concerns to change? All right. They are approved then. And we'll go to open discussion. Item number 1, pay to park information. Ryan, page 25 of your packet.
Yes, thank you. So a little bit of background here. As you are probably aware, City Council did authorize $60,000 in a 21-20 for the purchase of pay to park stations for Allen Park. At the staff level, we have been holding off on that because there's been so much about Allen Park that's been in flux. We didn't really know what the right approach was, considering all the. I did, at the request of the Community Development Committee, put together a packet that I presented to them last week. It's the same packet of information I have in front of you now. It includes a general overview of the systems available for pay to park infrastructure from T2 systems. They are.
Can I stop you just for a second?
Yep.
If you presented this to another committee, are we at any risk of anything right now?
No.
Okay.
They requested that we move it over.
I just want to make sure that we didn't have some open public meeting act violation. Okay.
T2 systems, they are one of a couple fairly large vendors of this kind of equipment throughout North America. Did provide me a quote based on some assumptions, a revised quote based on some assumptions for what we would install at Allen York Park, and that's in your packet. These systems are available as solar powered units, which even in the winter when it's dark and rainy, they said as long as it has exposure to the sky, it's still able to function just fine. They're based in Vancouver, BC, so have some experience with this type of weather. They have the flexibility in setting it up for receiving different types of payment, whether that's card, cash, or even change. They also do offer a mobile device payment system, so you have an app on your phone and you can just pay from your phone. And then the flexibility to either do control parking via putting numbers on each of the spots or doing license plate parking, I think would probably be the preferred route as we go. And then they have a back-end software that not only gives you a bunch of analytics, but also my understanding from the vendor is that there is a portal of some kind that enforcement staff can then access from their vehicles to be able to see who's over time, who didn't pay, and then take action as needed to provide enforcement for that.
Okay.
I will throw out there that I am waiting for information to return from one other company called Ventec. They are the company that supplied us the kiosk at the boat launch. And I think there would be some wisdom as long as their system is comparable and offers the same features, all of the same type of system, especially when we consider what it is we're going to do with perhaps coordinating buying boat passes and providing parking for the boat launch. I did have a good conversation with Nancy, who's here this evening. She shared with me some information on products that were used. I believe it was City of Seattle for that kind of coordination between parking and in this case, it was renting vehicles. But I would think that if a company can facilitate that, perhaps they can also renting a parking spot as well. Yeah. So some investigative work to do there. But really, I think the decision at this point is to give you an idea, or the point here now in front of you is to let you know what the cost is going to be roughly. We'll see what Ventec comes in at. But then to open up the discussion of, is this the direction that the council's like to go?
Two things. The parking at Ruston Way, I don't know if you've ever been there in their parking structure. Obviously, they do validating through their restaurants and stuff, but I've walked by one of their officers there, and they have cameras and everything that takes a picture of that. And then whenever someone enters their license plate for validation, it clears that flag on them. So, you know, if they're driving around, they just take all the pictures of the cars and something flashes red after the hour that says this has not yet been, or 2 hours have not yet been validated for them. But I don't know what system they use, but I was really impressed with just seeing that.
Yeah.
And the second is for you. Is this something your officers are going to have time for? Is this going to have to be a volunteer?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Would this be something that might fall under that volunteer position that kind of went away in parking
I
enforcement?
talked to Ryan about that, because like I said, with this comes the expectation of enforcement.
Yeah.
And the 2 to 3 officers that we have on any given Saturday, Sunday, and this difficult for them to manage what's going on at the park, the boat launch. Now you throw parking on top of that.
Yeah.
It would be difficult. So we would have to look at doing something different, whether it's having a CSO, having them work the weekends to do it, maybe having volunteers be able to do it. There are things that we could do. I definitely support the pay to park because I think
Okay.
that would help with the issues that we have with overcrowding down there. I think it might increase some of the things that we have, like pushing people out into the neighborhoods. But again, if we can kind of develop an enforcement program and mark some of the city streets, permanent parking or no parking,
Yeah.
I think we have to, all these things have to be in step if we want this to be a successful program. But I do think that we should be charging for parking, especially during peak use time. One thing I would say is from a security standpoint that if we can go away from cash and make it card or app only, so that way people aren't breaking in it, it won't stop them because they may think there's money in it. But if we can lessen that chance, like I think the kiosk is card only, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so something similar to that is would be my input.
And the chief points out a good thing to remember is that in there is a likelihood here that for some people they just won't care. And this will just push them out to the streets elsewhere. And John and the chief and I have talked about the creation perhaps of another RPZ, residential parking zone up in the areas there around the park, so that people who live there can get a pass that they can post on their, place on their vehicles, so that potentially, if we were to go that route, it makes it a lot easier to spot those that don't belong there. We can sort out the other issues with trying to figure out how to adequately staff the enforcement side, then we can probably do something about.
So we would be able to get a city pass, city resident pass or sticker or something, or
That's essentially what you'd be doing with the RPZ. But it could be accommodated several ways. I mean, it's several different things. Our code supports the creation of RPZ.
Okay.
So we have a number of them around the high school.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those residents have to get a pass. They can hang it in your mirror. You stick it on the back, hang it in your mirror.
So then I guess I'm thinking about, because I live right by Bonney Lake High, and I don't find that to be, a place where a lot of cars are kind of, drowning into the surrounding area. But in the case of, the park, yes, right. And so if residents are then having those tags or whatever in their cars, what are they then doing for things like guests?
I was talking to, because these are issued through the city clerk's office, and I believe that they get a specific number of guest passes that they can give to people if they know they're coming over.
Okay.
So that they're covered.
Okay.
What's the next step?
Well, at this point, I mean, really, a couple things. One is, obviously, we're coming close to the end of the year. I believe T2 estimated that their work associated with this proposal would take, they put 120 days to it. That's going out into next year. I think Sherry doesn't require, but I'm saying, consistent with what she's required to do. If we're ordering equipment, it has to be here on site by the end of the year. So I could talk to the vendor that we end up going with and seeing how quickly they can get the equipment here. I would assume, and now I'm getting outside of my wheelhouse a little bit, the other option is that perhaps we elect to move forward. We don't worry too much about that, and I don't know if Sherry can catch it up in a budget amendment.
Yeah, since it isn't in the proposed budget that's before you now, if you were to push it in next year, just when we brought it forward, we note that it's not a budgeted item and it would have to be caught up in a budget.
Which wouldn't be, it's a rollover item. So.
Which we've done that before.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I do have some more questions about this. And so I'm seeing that it is billed monthly, $50 a unit. And if I'm looking at this correctly, there are six pay units.
So yes.
And where are those going?
So there are 6 units, and that number is based on applied by the vendor. Obviously, they're going to give you a quote. They're going to put it in their favor.
Yeah.
It was based on the idea that in their experience, each unit is good for 50 spaces.
Okay.
What are they measuring that on? They're measuring it during peak times. How long is the line getting it?
Okay, right? Gotcha. Yeah.
Now, we don't necessarily have to purchase 6. We could go with what we originally planned on, before.
Okay.
And where we were planning on placing those was boat trailer parking, so the Field Fort parking lot,
Yep.
the lot off of Bonney Lake Boulevard.
Yep.
It's a long lot there, and we had originally talked about putting 2 there,
Okay.
and then 1 over in the Snack Shack parking lot.
Gotcha.
And then we've got a new ball field.
And at this point, yeah, you're right. When we put together this plan initially, we had forgotten about that, and that final build out is going to be 105 spots, I believe. So, and it's likely, especially with the use of that field, you'd want 2 out there on the weekends. That'll be quite busy.
Is it realistic to, because I was seeing how much, I guess you can make, I don't know if that's even,
Yeah, what's the projected revenue?
yeah, I'm not sure if that's.
You know, I didn't really even go into asking about projected revenue because
okay.
my understanding really is we're not doing this for revenue. We're doing this, obviously there's a return.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have nailed down. But overall, I mean, what we're trying to do is control who's parking and where they're parking at. And so I haven't gone down that path yet. I'm sure they have all kinds of case studies they could just furnish me to delve into.
How much does it cost monthly to manage this system? Because other than the $50 per unit a month for the programming, it looks like.
Well,
the subscription.
If you're the vendor, it's trouble-free all the time and you never have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good question. At this point, not one I'm prepared to answer with any real exact numbers.
Okay.
If it's like the boat kiosk, I mean, honestly, we don't have a whole lot to do. A lot of monthly
Extra.
costs that go into operating. And certainly there's a power bill, there's a cellular
gotcha.
network.
Okay.
But any troubleshooting would be handled by them.
Any troubleshooting would be handled by that. If there's a problem with the equipment, I'm sure that there's a service.
Yeah, this subscription looks like $3,600.
I think it's a great idea. I just, I have the
I'm
same
sorry.
question you were talking about too, as far as enforcement,
And that's an important thing, right? Because if we're going to put these in, we do also have to show that the system, because if people learn that they cannot pay and nobody's going to do anything about it,
then don't pay.
Really?
Okay.
So that's an important part of this that, and I know that, talk about it with the chief a lot. There's a very, very real concern there about how we do that. And obviously I'd let him speak to that. It seems to be a good system. These are used, like I said, all throughout North America. I am curious to see what Ventec can do for us. Obviously, it behooves us to have multiple quotes for this kind of thing. So I want to be able to do that. That's what I got for you right now.
It's looking like $3,600 a year covers all 6 units, which is really.
Yeah, that's the Iris core line item that you're looking at there. Yeah. And Iris is their back-end software.
Okay.
So I believe that's their monthly subscription software. Also assists with.
Okay.
If they have like QR codes that they could put in front of each parking stall that people could just, once they park, they can scan that QR code and pay for it. And then if they need to renew it while they're at the park, rather than go back to their car, they can just do it from their phone.
They're able to do that just since you're doing it by license plate. You're able to do that over the app by license plate. You don't need a QR code specific to the spot because the license plate is what is you're paying for the parking by. So if a user comes in, they park their car, they pay for an hour, that fee is tied to their license plate when it's coming close to expiring. If they're on the other side of the park, they can go in, add more time based on their license plate, and there really isn't a need for like a QR code associated with this.
I know in Seattle they have, I think it's Pay to Park is the app, and that one will send you a message if you're close to expiring.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
you can
And I
just
believe
add
this
more
functions
time.
much the same way.
Oh,
That you can just renew it.
You
And
could.
Your time.
for us, if we're paying this rental fee, we don't utilize that park in the winter necessarily as much. So how does that affect us? Is there a way to kind of like stop the pay to park in the winter months when we're not going to have the busy season, and then just have it work during summer, or
This
is
is
something that's going to have to be year round?
it's year round. It's a subscription service, so we would have to be paying for it year round. I do think that there's still value, even in the off season, we'll call it, with the landing at Lake Taps going in across the street. I think you're going to find that at least in those lots right across the street from there, we might have some parking issues that this could assist with.
Our library is a perfect example of the overflow when Renwood was
Yeah.
built out.
Mhm.
They were
Exactly.
parking all through here all night long. So
Plus soccer.
Yep.
They'll be playing soccer over there since. That. I had a question. As you're doing your research, can you see if any of these are compatible with automated license plate readers?
Automated license plate reader.
Yeah, so we could equip a car with the ALPR and could go through and scan
Mhm.
and connect to that system.
That would save a lot.
Yeah, that would be an easy way for our whoever is doing it to just drive through instead of going through and having to put in each license plate. I know that the technology is out there, and we're looking at some other applications for license plate readers, and that might be one that could help us on multiple.
Yeah, I'll ask.
I have a question, and this is probably a question for you, but when we're talking enforcement, is this a ticket? Is this a boot? Is this impounding?
It's usually going to be just a ticket. It would take
Okay.
a lot to impound. If it's a hazard,
Mhm.
that's how we would probably impound it. And I know that there are certain laws on when we can and can't. This is parked legally in a parking lot, and they're only over the expired time. It would be parking ticket, which doesn't go on your driving record and doesn't count against
Okay.
your insurance.
I just recall, being in my teens and being in Seattle,
Did
you
get a
know,
boot?
and there was a boot on my car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bigger cities do the boot, or sometimes they impound. I would not suggest that for this situation.
Okay.
I would suggest a ticket. I mean,
Well, we were talking teeth, so I was like, that's
Those
that's
are
teeth.
teeth.
Yeah, and if we want that kind of teeth, it's certainly your obligation. But maybe we move to that, see how it works with just the ticket, start at the lowest level.
the only thing I'd like to know a little more is on the back end how the money is funded back to us, whether there's going to be an administrative cost on our end to manage
Process
that,
it, yeah.
or if it's just here's your direct deposit, here's what we kept, and here's all that.
Yeah, I can dig at that a little. for
Okay.
you. Is this sounding like an item then that get some of these questions answered and bring it back again, or does this then?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
at
By then I should have another quote.
that point, it might go back to finance.
Yeah.
It'll bounce to the third committee for the official review, and once you get that second quote back, then
Concerned about putting it at the new baseball park because we're going to have people coming for their baseball games. Yes, if it's free parking at the multi-field, then everybody's going to go there instead of go to the park parking.
I think
So,
the plan is to have
yeah.
pay station there too.
yeah, I know. I just don't like people are paying thousands of dollars to have their kids play in sports, and now we're like, hey, we're going to nickel and dime you. We're going to charge you for parking too while you're at it.
Yeah.
We're becoming Seattle.
I think one of the things we have to be considering though is that given the use of the park, I think that it's definitely, we want to be considerate of the other users of the park as well. And pay to park helps out when we start talking about turnover. Don't have typically the people who will come and just camp there all day long because, hey, they found a free spot. Maybe they were at Johnny's baseball game, but then they moved on over to something else. Or then a friend was putting a boat out, so they hopped on the boat. And there's multiple games throughout the day going on there. It does help us with that. So I don't feel like we're necessarily going in the direction of Seattle as much as we're improving the operations. I think it's
And we can also set the rate on that too, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we can do it to where it's
Time of day of the week.
and that might answer some of your questions on nighttime parking or anything like that, or winter parking where we can adjust. After 4 p.m. in the winters, there's nothing there, and if there is a soccer game at night, then under the lights, and it's not a pay thing, and
Mm-hmm.
with the residential parking zone, there's some options there too for citizens to be able to get a pass that can bypass that, and a little sticker in the back window or something that wouldn't have to require it, but
I think I would be more likely to support something like this if, the license plate thing, for example, because it'll be a complete waste of time if you guys have to enter in every single vehicle just to even check that. I think that's definitely a waste of time. So if the company offers something like that, but even with what you were saying, with what was it? Being able to look at it on your phone and then people being able to renew up or add up will really add to the where we don't have to do as much enforcement.
sure.
So I have a couple of them related to the parking and to the both associated with this, but the buzz is already out there. We are seeing it, that they've saw that at another committee they talked about this. And I just want to talk about messaging and allowing the public to come in maybe one occasion and be able to speak, because they didn't get that opportunity very often. Wasn't designed so much when we had the emergency vote closer. So I think the messaging is not that it's going to be a revenue generator, but as Ryan mentioned, looking at changing the behavior of people and being respectful of everybody who uses, whether you put an hour, a 2 or 3 hour limit on that, and then proactively getting the message out, not expecting them to come and read, but to go out to the communities or to the park and explain it to people. I read some of them are very commonsensical, the responses, they understand it. Other ones are looking at it like they're trying to generate revenue for that. The software that you're speaking is called license plate recognition software. The city of Olympia has that. And they have, they can just do it from their car, go along and read the plate and immediately grab that information for that. The other city that I worked for had a successful called the Senior Patrol that managed all of the parking in the downtown area. So I don't know if Bonney Lake has ever looked at that, but there were 3 people. They retired. I think they had like 6, and they liked it. They, were kind of like a little clique, and they traveled in twos, and went to do that. Yeah.
Raise your right hand.
So that's not exactly what I'm like, but there are things. But I think the messaging is a thing here to not say that we're becoming Seattle, and you're not alone. If you look at where the boat launch is down in Renton, called Coolon Park, they do, one of the reasons that they do it is to keep trailers in the trailer spot and the cars in the car spot. So if the cars park in the trailer the other way around, it just really causes an issue. So they use that to control or to manage that piece too. And then lastly, the piece that, and I don't hear it mentioned very often, I think some people don't realize, there are 2 plans that were created in 2005 and 2011. They're called the Lake Taps Boat Management Plan, and the second one's called similar to it, but it's like an update of that. It's called the Collaborative Plan to Manage the Lake. And in it, Bonney Lake committed to, what it pointed out to in the 2005 plan, that as far back as 1982, there were way too many boats on the lake. They had a study that went through and they counted all the developed lots. They at that point counted the boats that were actually docked on the water, and then they estimated how many they call it off lake, come onto the lake. And then that was updated in 2011. And of course, we're now 20 years later, or 10 years, 20 years later, and there are way more boats, bigger motors. And so Bonney Lake had committed in the plan to helping control public access to the lake, to help reduce the number of boats that are on the lake. And back in the 2005 plan, there was some, I don't know if they're called stanchions, I don't know, whatever it was. It was a system of securing the launch during certain hours, and also limiting it when so many people had already launched for the day. And it was explained at that time that system wasn't operating very well, but Bonney Lake committed to getting up and running for the 2011 boat season. That no longer is operational. Pierce County controls theirs by the parking lot and then the gate that they have. So I can send you all this so you can see the reports and the commitments that were made. But I would encourage you to look at the technology that could help also do that while you're doing this parking, so that maybe we can have reasonable access to the lake, not access 24/7 to get people coming onto the lake late at night, or leaving late at night. Like for Pierce County, I think you have to be off the water at I want to say 7 or 8 o'clock. I forget what the hours are, and that would certainly help for some of the problems that we have on the lake. And some of them, are probably people who live on the lake, but for the most part, the offenders tend to come from, they just don't care, they don't live here, and they get on the lake and they stay on the lake. And as Brian said, that also causes them to camp in those parking spots and not just stay for a couple hours, but take up the spot for the whole day with this unlimited resource. So I can send you that via email so you can have that and take a look at those plans. But we would appreciate that particular commitment, hopefully being.
Thank
I
you.
have two brief things to say if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Ryan, for helping us understand what's going on. He's been very, very responsive when we contacted him and very cooperative, helping us understand what's going on. And we play the role of communicating. So, for the record, my name is Jeff Lincoln. I'm a Pierce County Voting Advisory Commission commissioner. And I'm viewing myself as kind of a go-between between Bonney Lake and the county, because I don't think that there's a lot of communication. So Councilmember Morrill for First District sponsored firing up this committee again. At some point in time, I think it's going to be important for the city to be talking with the county at the appropriate points. There's going to be an annual report written this year. There's been a lot of issues that have been discussed. And reviewing the two studies that were done in 2005 and 2011, which is the second time I've gone through these today, problems that we have on the lake are exactly the same problems that was on the lake in 2005, literally topic by topic. So it's an interesting thing. And then finally, thank you, committee, for letting us talk, letting us feel like we're part of this community. We are. We're very much committed to try and make it work for everybody.
We do appreciate your communication out to the public very much so.
We've sat in your seats or been across the table from you, and we try to get them to see things from a different point of view, and that, no one's trying to generate revenue by doing this.
Yeah.
And the less you say about the revenue, the better.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for the good of the order?
Councilmember Epps, your question from earlier about the percentage to the different agencies. So, for the opioid settlement, so Bonney Lake is receiving 0.119 and change percent. Pierce County is receiving 7.23%. Seattle is receiving 6.6%, and King County is receiving 13.9%. So, like Seattle and King County is receiving a larger percentage, but under the matrix of factors, they probably do have more of a issues from the opioid epidemic.
And what's the state's take on that?
That's not on the matrix. They're receiving separate funds, and my understanding is there might be grant opportunities for local government from the money that the state's receiving. But the MOU was specifically like a local government.
Okay.
For local government.
Thank you so much. Anyone else for the good of the order? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.